The Pentagon just suspended CMMC Phase II. That means hundreds, if not thousands of defense contractors may no longer need the third-party assessments that they've spent months, if not a couple of years, preparing for. However, rather than listening to the noise and the Reddit comments, do not get this misconstrued. This doesn't mean the end of CMMC. In fact, one wrong assumption today could still cost your company a project, a contract, and millions of dollars. So stick with me here because I want to get into what was actually suspended, why the government suddenly changed direction, what Congress was preparing to fund, and most importantly for you guys who are watching, the 5 things that you should do next. So stay with me because we're going to get into that action plan near the end. So you're thinking about, well, what happened? Well, congratulations, July 14th. Now we're back in July 13th. The Department of War announced the immediate suspension of CMMC Phase II. Phase II had been scheduled to begin on November 10th, 2026, and it would have expanded mandatory CMMC Level 2 assessments performed by certified third-party assessment organizations, better known as C3PAOs. Now, I previously did a video on these 2 different pathways inside of CMMC Level 2 certification. I'll link it in the comments below. It gives you a really better grasp of what we are talking about holistically, but keep on watching. So these assessments are now on hold, but you might be wondering, well, what about CMMC Level 3? Well, interestingly enough, CMMC Level 3 government assessments are also paused, and acquisition officials have been instructed to remove those requirements from affected solicitations and contracts. That sounds, by the way, like a huge retreat on this effort, and it is. But here's the distinction that every contractor needs to understand. The government paused the certification process. It did not pause the obligation to protect government information. And this is where the story gets complicated because CMMC Phase I remains in place. That means contractors may still need to complete CMMC Level 1 or Level 2 self-assessments. Remember, we get into that in the previous video comments below. NIST Special Publication 800-171 Revision 2 remains the baseline for companies handling controlled unclassified information. DFARS cybersecurity clauses remain in effect. Cyber incident reporting remains in effect. And the Department of War can still conduct selected government-led assessments. So no, this is not permission to uninstall multi-factor authentication, cancel your security monitoring, and replace your security systems plan with a sticky note that says, nah, you're probably fine. The paperwork may change. Let's be honest about that. The security responsibility, however, does not, which really raises the obvious questions for all of us. If the underlying requirements are staying, why did the government suspend Phase II at all? And while there may be multiple reasons why the government actually suspended Phase II, the official explanation, and the one that honestly makes a lot of sense to me, is that CMMC had become too expensive, too complicated, and too difficult to scale, especially for small businesses and non-traditional contractors. We've done videos on this as well, so this is not some type of secret that the government just came up with. The assessment, by the way, well, that assessment cost was only one piece of the problem. Companies were paying for consultants, new software, secure cloud environments, policy development, managed security services, employee training, remediation, and evidence collection. Then, by the way, there was this huge assessor bottleneck. More than 100,000 companies could potentially need assessments, but the available C3PAO ecosystem was nowhere near large enough to evaluate everyone on schedule. In other words, the government created a cybersecurity checkpoint for the entire defense industrial base and then realized the line might stretch around the block for them to be able to get the defense industrial base up to these standards. And that's a huge issue, by the way, for any type of Department of War contract, procurement strategy, getting to that point where we have the arsenal of freedom that Secretary Pete Hegseth has talked about. So what did the department do? Well, this is Washington, D.C. So they created a task force. That's right, a task force to rethink the program itself. And the language being used suggests that the next version of CMMC may look a lot different. And that's because Department CIO Kirsten Davies is leading the CMMC reform effort. She's establishing a CMMC reform task force to conduct a top-to-bottom review over the next 60 days. The department says all groups will include cross-departmental representation, although a full public membership list has not been released yet. All we know is that CIO Kirsten Davies is going to be the one leading it, so we'll see how that cross-department representation is actually going to play out at the end of the day. Its assessment and assignment is bigger than choosing a new implementation date. The task force is being asked to reduce compliance costs, improve operational resilience, lower barriers for small and non-traditional businesses, and focus more directly on measurable cybersecurity risk. That can mean greater reliance on self-attestation, targeted government audits, commercial cybersecurity platforms, managed services, secure enclaves, continuous monitoring, and stronger recognition of existing commercial certifications. None of those outcomes, by the way, have been finalized. So don't just start planning on what you should do right now. Give it a little bit. And this is why the department has issued a request for information asking companies what actually improves security and what simply creates more paperwork. We got that in the link below. Take a look at that RFI. Congress, by the way, was already wrestling with the same cost problem, and that may actually be part and parcel of why the Department of War has suddenly taken this turn. And that's because Congress was preparing to fund CMMC grants. Because before the suspension, Congress had heard the same things from many small business owners. This is way too expensive. So Congress was considering a grant program to help small businesses and non-traditional contractors pay for CMMC Level 2 certification. The proposal included grants of up to $100,000 per company with as much as $50 million available across the program. But much of that money, by the way, was aimed at paying for the third-party assessment itself. Now, the department is reconsidering whether those assessments should be broadly required. So Congress, by the way, may face a entirely new question. Should taxpayer dollars pay for more audits, or should they pay for the actual security improvements contractors need? It's a very different question right here, right? One is, I certify you. And the other one is, I'm getting you the ability to be able to do what I want certification to be able to do for you. You get the little bit of the mix right there. And this is because paying someone to inspect a leaking roof is useful, right? Paying to fix the roof, well, that's probably better and gets you to where you want to be. And that brings us, by the way, to the most important part for your company. Let's talk about that. These are going to be the 5 things contractors you need to do right now. Number 1, keep implementing NIST 800-171. Do not stop your cybersecurity program. The underlying security requirements remain in place and they're not going to go anywhere, right? You know this. I know this. Keep doing that. Number 2, review every active solicitation. Remember, still look for CMMC Level 2, C3PAO, or Level 3 requirements. If they're still included, watch for a formal amendment. Number 3, review your existing contracts. A press release does not modify a contract. Let me just say that again. A press release does not modify a contract. You need an actual signed modification before assuming a requirement has been removed. This is key. So many companies, especially small business contractors, make this mistake routinely on so many other different matters. Number 4, preserve your compliance evidence. Keep your system security plan of action and milestones, SPRS score, policies, technical evidence. Really keep these records current. You're going to need them later. And number 5, respond to the RFI. We're putting in the comments. This is important. This is going to impact what the Department of War may do next. And don't just tell, by the way, that CMMC is expensive. The Department of War already knows that. Explain which controls reduce real risk, which requirements create unnecessary costs, and what changes would help small contractors remain both secure and competitive. Also, when you're thinking about this, you as a company, you need to provide specific practical recommendations that now may help shape whatever replaces the current model. The government's out there listening to us. We got to talk back. And the bottom line that we're all getting to is this. CMMC Phase 2 is suspended. It's not killed, just suspended. Cybersecurity compliance, that's still regulation and that's still law. It's still in effect. The biggest mistake contractors are going to make now is either continuing to spend blindly on where they were already going with CMMC Level 2 certification or stopping everything. Think about that for a second. Listen to this. If you like this information, if you want to be able to keep up what's actually going on inside of government contracting, please make sure to subscribe. Hit that like button. If you got any questions about any of this CMMC Level 2 or just government questions in general, make sure to reach out to us. We try to respond to every single comment as they come in. As always, thanks for watching.